Hello and welcome back to the Long Live Rock and Roll podcast with your hosts, Mr. Laz Michaelides on this screen and Mr. Felipe Amorim on the other screen. How you doing, man?
All good, man. How are you
Yeah,
doing?
I'm okay. Yeah, really hot. I hate the heat, and so do you, right?
Yes, I feel like
Tell
it's
me your
really hot
phrase.
here.
Tell me your quote.
Well, when it's too hot for a South American, it is too hot.
When a South American tells you it's too hot,
Yeah, it's
that's
hot
when you
for
know it's too
everyone.
hot. I
Yeah.
know, yeah. Um, you might be hearing some different music in our opening, or no music at all, actually, because we're in the midst of changing our intro music. Check this out. So the intro music we normally use for our for the show, as you guys have been used to for the past 54 episodes, whoever owned it, we got it copyright free, which means we get to use it on all our stuff and it's all great and everything. And suddenly, 2 years later, the person has decided to sell his music or her music. And so now the music that we've been using for 2 years, we can't
Belongs
use
to
it anymore.
someone else.
Exactly, belongs to someone else. But that's the world of corporate music, isn't it? Cash in and get some money where you can. We're fully endorsing of the artist getting paid for his or her work, but he did say it was free when I downloaded it. So I've got a little bee in my bonnet, which is why I had to have that tiny 30-second rant there. But anyway, that would explain. It's not a new show. It's not a different show. It's not a different topic or anything. It's just some new music or no music.
We should stop being lazy and record it ourselves, isn't it?
Oh, we said we'd do that, didn't we? We said we'd record
We
our own
need to
jingle.
come up with a riff.
Oh, do you know what, man? I swear that's going to be easier because I'm having all these back and forths with these labels and like I say, hold on, here's my copyright certificate. Yeah, but that was 2 years ago. As of now, you've got to follow the process of who owns the music now. And I'm like,
Yeah.
fuck I can't deal with this. Yeah, Felipe, let's do it, man. Yeah, I think you're going to come round in a couple of weeks, aren't you? So let's record.
Exactly. Let's
We'll
just
write
record
something.
some stuff, record some kick-ass riff.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Well, we really hope you enjoyed the last two episodes, which were the cover episodes, the originals versus the covers. I know we certainly enjoyed them a lot, and thank you very much for all you listeners and viewers who gave us some of the cover songs to do. Because as we said from the first episode, it was two of Felipe's and two of mine. Then we got you guys involved and started getting your ideas and your favorite covers in, and it's kind of taken off. Everyone's really enjoyed it, got some really positive feedback. So trust us in saying there will be many more to come. Before we get into the episode, just the normal terms and conditions. Please follow us on the social media platforms. You can see them all below. You got your Facebook, your Instagram, your YouTube. Hit subscribe, hit follow, hit like, and you're going to stay up to date with all of our content, new episode releases. We put out little sound bites from the episode. So if there's an album that you're not interested in and you hear a sound bite of us talking about it, and Felipe saying one of his incredible statements that leave me, baffled and bemused every week, then that's the place that you're going to find it. And maybe you join in and you find out you end up liking the episode. You're not going to know unless you subscribe. So please hit all those subscribe buttons, like, follow, share, comment, all that stuff, so you can stay up to date. We are doing an album today. And we are doing an album chosen by Mr. Felipe. So I will give you the album details as normal, and then I'm going to ask Felipe why he chose the album. So the name of the album is We're an American Band by the band Grand Funk Railroad, released July 15th, 1973, and recorded in 3 days, 12th to the 15th of June, 1973 in Florida. The genre is associated as hard rock. It's 40 minutes in length, released by the Capitol label and produced by Todd Rundgren with the singles We're an American Band and Walk Like a Man. So Felipe, tell us, bro, why did you choose this album?
I chose it because I love the band. I love Grand Funk. They were one of my favorite bands when it was oh my god, it was long ago, when it was about 25, 26.
Right.
And was playing gigs and playing jazz and rock gigs, but very rarely having a chance to play something like that. But back in the day, we had VHS tapes, of our favorite bands. And a friend of mine came with Grand Funk, and he was a bass player. He was like, "Man, you got to listen to this. This is just brilliant. I just discovered this band, and they're amazing." So, the first thing I've seen of them was like a concert. They were sharing the bill with Freddie King. So and it's super cool. Like they just smashing, and Freddie King is also playing a great gig. So same stage, two different gigs, of course, but and they were like so tight as a band, and the song structures were so complex, and rhythm changes and tempo changes. And I love that when you listen to a song, you get into the groove, and then out of the blue, the song sounds completely different. And they had that vibe, and also because I'm a drummer, I simply loved the drumming and the fact that the drummer is a great singer. And so we covered the Eagles, a few episodes ago, and there's
we also did
band.
the band. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. So all bands that you have drummers who can sing and can sing really well. So all these things they made me fall in love with Grand Funk. And so I was listening to loads of live stuff and different songs and the singles and all that stuff. Don't remember really getting to the albums one by one, but I did listen to the albums. And when I had to think about an album, it's really hard to choose because they are like Thin Lizzy in that sense. Every album's got something that is worth listening to.
It does it
really
is that true? Because let me just pause you for a second and say that from my research, it seems like this is the album that everyone swears by for Grand Funk. And I haven't seen anyone say the others are rubbish, but it seems like it's all led up to this one. But the others, are they worth checking out as well?
They're worth checking out, man, because when you see the live set, there's lots of songs that are not part of this album. And it's just like it has the most iconic song an American band could possibly write. Maybe that's, it's one of those. I'm a big fan of albums that start with the perfect song, because that's what's going to convince me to keep listening all the way to the end.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So, and We Are an American Band is just a perfect rock song to open an album. I love it. That was the main reason. Yeah. And the cowbell, of course.
The cowbell, yeah. I have to say, I just want to say straight off, I thoroughly enjoyed the album. Like, really, really enjoyed it. And I don't tend to enjoy these kind of albums, and I'll tell you why. It's because how do I say this without insulting every classic rock band out there? There's a lot of bands that have a generic rock sound. I think we've done Dire Straits. I'm trying to say this without trying to insult any bands, but bands like, I don't know, AC/DC, T-Rex, some Dire Straits. Do you know what I mean? They kind of have this token classic rock sound where if you didn't know these rock bands, you could put them all in one playlist and someone would say, are these the same bands? Are these different bands? Do you know what I mean? Vocals aside, because obviously Bon Scott sounds different from this singer. But do you know what I mean? The general vibe and the general attitude is the same. And I call that classic rock, those kind of that classic rock sound starts with a bluesy guitar riff where the drums and the bass are kind of playing simple stuff behind, and you've got a singer who can sing nicely, not screaming, not growling, not operatic, just good rock singing.
Yeah.
And it felt to me like this album was like a step above the rest. I really felt that way. I felt that the songs had such a cohesion and everything going on in between them was interesting. Yeah. It wasn't like anything was repetitive and I was like, sixth song now and it sounds the same structure, same this and that. I was just fascinated by it, man. I remember listening and going, Jesus, how have I not heard of this band before? That's actually, I have heard of them, but I've only heard of them because Frank Zappa was a fan of them, apparently.
Well, and that says a lot about them, right?
Well, it does, doesn't it? Especially because Frank Zappa, when Frank Zappa was asked about his influences, he talked about Edgar Varese, who's an avant-garde classical composer, and then he'd talk about some blues and prog guitarists. He'd very rarely mention a sort of standard classic rock band. He said little things about the Beatles here. He jammed with Pink Floyd, but for him to come out and say this is a good band, that takes some, to convince Zappa. That's a big thing.
But you can tell why, isn't it? Because they have some elements of blues and hard rock, and even a bit of jazz, I would say, at some points. But they are funky, The funk in the name is not for the sake of it. They way more groovy than the most rock bands, I would say.
I agree. Yeah, I agree.
And groovy and heavy. That's a combination that is not easy to put up. So
Absolutely. Yeah, no, you're right. Because it's weird because obviously you guys know my background in heavy metal. So when I hear tiny little fragments or elements of metal, I kind of my mind just goes straight to it. And you've got little bits in there like dissonant guitar playing. And now rock like this is very, very consonant. Naturally, you're hearing nice chords, chords that work one after the other. If a guitarist plays a note, it's gonna. If a guitarist plays two notes, it's gonna sound nice next to each other. Dissonance is the opposite of that. Dissonance is where you play two notes one after the other, and you go, "Oh, no, no, thank you," or you play a chord that has, or you
That's
play
the best definition of dissonance I've ever heard in my life.
dissonance, playing
When
two
you
notes
play two
together.
notes and you say no,
I go,
thank
well,
you.
no, thank you. Yeah. Playing a chord, jazz, there's lots of dissonance in jazz because you might play a normal chord, but then a jazzer might add a special note at the end that makes you go the same things. Go, oh, no, I don't like that. Now, that's not common in rock like T Rex, like AC/DC, because I don't want to use the word pop rock, but it is accessible rock. So you want your audience to enjoy it. It's not jazz, it's not heavy metal.
And I think there's an element of predictability in that kind of classic rock formula.
Exactly.
You want it to be predictable. You want the groove to stay the same to the end. You want the riff to repeat itself a million times. It's part of what it is.
Yeah.
And then we have bands. I just want to compare them to Deep Purple because that's a band that has.
I can't believe you said that. I can't believe you said that. It's in my monologue and my notes. Yeah, Deep Purple.
All right. So because for a few reasons, I'd say. Like first, they can funk, and Deep Purple was good at Ian Pace was really good at grooving, like beyond the realms of rock and roll, and they have some elements of maybe classical music, and the fast guitar phrases and all that stuff, and keyboards, Hammond organ and all that stuff that Deep Purple came up with. I mean, I think those bands were performing around the same time. They might even have influenced each other. I don't know.
One note I made is that Machine Head came out 1 year before this.
Oh wow, that's it then. So
great,
maybe they were listening to it, and and you might agree with me that one big thing in the album is the fact that they made the keyboard player a member of the band. So they had what's his name, Craig Frost, playing organ and I think
he wasn't
as well, electric piano and all the stuff.
He wasn't part of the band before this album, so they were a trio. They were previously a trio, and Craig Frost joined on keys. But he was on the previous album, but he was only credited as an additional musician.
Yeah. So when it turns someone into effectively like a member of the band, so obviously that guy has some creative input, and obviously you can highlight the keyboards in more sections of songs because it's not like your fans are not expecting it because you have a keyboard player in the band, so you can have more keyboard solos and keyboard intros, and that really, really adds to the sound of Grand Funk. It's not only the distorted guitars, it kind of and they seem to kind of emphasize either guitar or keyboards. It's kind of they leave room to each other, so you never get bored. Well, and I think that might be one of the things I like the most about the album. You never get bored. You can listen to the album start to finish.
I agree with you, and I was trying to figure out because there's different songwriters, as in there's two. Let's just tell you about the band quickly. So, on vocals, guitar, you've got Mark Farner. On organ, clavinet, electric piano, and Moog, which basically all keyboards and organs, is Craig Frost. You've got Mel Shaka on bass. I'm not sure you pronounce that. Shaka on bass. Don Brewer on drums, percussion, and vocals. And the songs were written by Don Brewer and Mark Farner, and they take turns doing the lead vocals. And I was trying to see, okay, on the songs that Farner does vocals, are they more like this? And on songs where Brewer does vocals, are they more different? And there's not really there's not a correlation. The first few songs, you kind of see Farner has the more rocky ones and Brewer has the more soulful ones, or vice versa. Did I get that right? No, Brewer has the more rocky ones and Farner the more soul-y ones. But then as the album goes on, it doesn't really stick that way. And I just thought that's great because that is great. That is a band understanding their overall sound.
Yeah, and there's an interesting thing is when you have two singers in the band, you might run the risk of having great vocals in a song and average vocals on another song, but they both technically great and very creative with their melodies, and they have a really good vocal range. So when you listen, they can hold a high note for a while with expression. So it's not like one is trying to catch up with the other. They're both really good. So you can't really say there's one lead singer in the band, really, or one better singer in the band, in my opinion.
That's got to be the criteria for success in a band with two vocalists, because if you have one better than the other, then the fans are they're not gonna turn, but they're gonna be like, well, come on, like he or she is so much better. Why don't you just let him sing all the songs? Leave that guy. But to have two, there's a number of bands that do it. As you said, The Band do it. Grand Funk Railroad do it. A heavy metal band called System of a Down, they've got two vocalists.
The Beatles, Pink Floyd,
of course, yeah. Just some so let's get into the songs, but just a bit of background before. They were called Grand Funk Railroad before, weren't they? But then for this album, they dropped the Railroad, which I'm not entirely sure why. I looked into it, couldn't find anything. I don't know if they thought the name was too long or something. They've got a new producer for this album because there was some criticisms of the previous albums that they sounded a bit muddy. The production wasn't very good. Just sonically to the ear, it wasn't very pleasant. So they got in Todd Lundgren, who, by all accounts and by the reviews he got, is a very, very modern producer in those days. He knew how to use the equipment. He knew how to make an album sound good. And it paid off, didn't it? Because the album sounds really clean, really lush, and very sonically pleasing. Sounds like it could have been recorded in the 90s.
Exactly. I mean, you can find, the remastered versions of it on Spotify and all that stuff. But everyone, who is involved with music knows that if you don't get a good sound when you're recording, there's only so much you can do with post-production, like remixing, remastering an album. Yes, you can make it sound better, but if it wasn't recorded properly, you just can't make too much out of it. So, and yes, it was really well recorded. It sounds like a live band, and they sound really tight. Every single note in the right place. They swing when they want to swing. They groove when they want to groove. They get heavy when they want to get heavy, and everything can be heard in detail because the production is great. So that I think the reasons why this album is so good and made them even bigger is like there's a certain point in a band's career when you are well known and you have a good following and you're touring the world and all that stuff, but that's your 7th album. It's like you kind of need to prove that you can still be creative.
Yeah.
And arguably that's their best album. And imagine, at that point in your career, after proving time and time again that you can do good music, and then you come up with your best work. Yeah. So there's a lot of things that make the album special. One is production. So they actually found someone who they could trust to actually capture the real sound of the band.
Yeah.
And the fact that they made the keyboard player a permanent member of the band, and they gave the keyboard more space. And the producer insisted that the drummer, Don Brewer, had to have the same amount of songs as lead singer as Mark Farner. So he wanted, I think it's 4 songs each, if I'm not wrong. I double checked. I think, yeah.
Do you want to lead the song conversation? Just take us through. You go whichever order you want.
Oh, yes. Well,
man, take us through.
We're going to start. Right. I'm going to start by quoting a couple of lines from We Are an American Band, because it starts with this amazing drum intro. It has to be featuring any top 5 drum intros. In rock music.
I need to pause you because I forgot I had a segment for you. Ready?
Right.
How rock and roll is that? And this is the question. How rock and roll is it that 3 seconds into a hard rock album, Grand Funk Railroad put in one of the best intro drum fills I've ever heard?
Yeah. Right. I'm going to expand your how rock and roll is that, okay? How Rock and Roll Is That? Drum intro with cowbell is an up-tempo song with lyrics about having fun with groupies, drinking, and playing poker with Freddie King.
You've won up to me. It's like in poker when you put down a bet and they go,
Yeah.
okay, I see your bet and I raise you.
Yes.
So I've said the drum fill and you've raised me the poker with Freddie King, the life on the road, and the cowbell. Well,
I mean, if you decide to put a cowbell in a song,
yeah.
it can only go two ways. It can be a disaster
Drum
or
fills,
epic.
yeah, drum fills on their own starting off an album. I wouldn't say they're that uncommon. This one's a very good drum fill though, so I'm kind of sitting at 70. But then poker with Freddie King and talking about the touring life, 75. Adding the cowbell, 85. There we go.
That's okay. I'll go with that 85.
That
so
fair?
yeah,
85?
so the lyrics I talked about was like up all night with Freddie King. I got to tell you, poker is his thing. Booze and ladies keep me right as long as we can make it to the show tonight. So basically, yeah. So poker with Freddie King, booze and the ladies, and but I love that he finished this line with "as long as we can make it to the show tonight." There's an element of professionalism right there. You know what, getting drunk, we're having fun, but we need to get to the next town and play the gig, and we're going to make everyone party really hard, because that would be like they basically trying to define what it is to be an American rock band in 1973. Is that the year?
Yeah. So it's an autobiographical account of Brewer's life on the road, isn't it? And the whole album, isn't it? It's about the touring life, the ups and downs, and we're going to get to some downs later on in the album of touring through America. Is that right?
Yeah. It starts by saying like 40 days on the road, isn't it? They already on the road for over a month, and it's about that. It's about there's nothing. They don't leave anything to interpretation on the lyrics.
Yeah,
it's very literal. It's what it is. Exactly. So basically, they're talking about having fun with the groupies, getting drunk, hitting the road, and and playing poker and everything that bands do on the road. But it sounds like an invitation for everyone to join them and party, because that's how the chorus goes, isn't it? So it's basically, we come into your town. So like, see all this like madness, all the mayhem we do behind the scenes, we're bringing it to your town so you can party with us. And I think it's quite cool. I mean, you got to put it into context. That's the 70s, and that's the vibe. That's the vibe you expected from a rock band in 1970s.
I keep forgetting. I don't want to go on about it too much because we have mentioned it in a bunch of the last episodes. I've just finished a documentary on the Vietnam War. And when you think that war lasted, and the bulk of it, the worst of it, lasted for 10 years, from 65 to 75, and you think of all the culture and everything that's happened in those 10 years in terms of music that's come out, films that were released. I don't really want to sort of think political events, because that's kind of aside from the arts. But a lot changed in culture from the 60s to the 70s. And
it did.
The Vietnam War at this point is still going on. And I think for a band, we've heard, look at our last few episodes. Don McLean, American Pie, we did the in-depth analysis of all the lyrics of that song, and that literally chronicled those 10 years. And it spoke about the segregation and the divide throughout America because of what we assume his lyrics alluded to, the Vietnam War. And I just thought to have a band come out and celebrate in this way was just really classy, because it's such a feel-good song, and I feel the whole album is such a feel-good album. I'll sum up my thoughts in my monologue, but it made me happy listening to it. I can't put it any other way. It's a happy listening album, and it starts with this song, which is a happy song.
I just want to play a rock gig after I listen to that song, or just go to a gig and party all night. It's such a good feeling, and such a positive song in many ways, And it's that they're not like specifically in that song, they're not getting political. They're not criticizing anything or anyone. They're not trying to. It doesn't even sound arrogant, because that's when I first heard the song, I was a bit, self-indulgent, isn't it? But no, not really. As I
No.
said, and I'll say it again, they are inviting you to join the party. They are coming to your town. They want to make you have fun, and that's it. So, what a great way to start an album, isn't it?
It is. It is. Yeah. Yeah. Really, really good. I like the songs or the music. I mean, yeah, the songs with cowbell get quite a bit of stick, don't they? But I thought this was a good one, and it was used quite tastefully. Do you know one thing that's interesting, and maybe you can connect and do the segue after this. A number of the songs had very unusual percussive endings.
Yeah.
I found that quite strange. Like I didn't like it, but at the same time, I didn't hate it.
Well, it doesn't matter when it's the last 20 seconds of the song.
I suppose it might. Yeah. It's arguable because
by the time you're starting the fade out, they just add layers and layers of weird percussion patterns that
unusual.
I don't know why they do that.
What was Don Brewer? Was he a percussionist? Do you know, or was he?
Yeah. I think he played percussion. I think he's the one playing percussion.
Why they made those decisions? Because
three
of the songs have a percussive ending.
I'm just going to guess. This is just a guess. Sometimes you can record some tracks that you're not going to use. So in studio you can overdub as many guitars or percussion, drums, and vocals as you want, and then you'll decide which ones to use, which ones to discard. Maybe they recorded layers of percussion that say, it doesn't really work, so maybe we can just have it at the end.
Yeah.
Or maybe it's just a piss take, or maybe it's just to make people who host podcasts talk about it. I don't know.
50 years later, yeah. Oh my God, it is almost 12th of July. So it's, by the time this episode will be out, it'll be September. So it's turned 50 years old 2 months ago, this album.
That's great.
Amazing stuff.
We didn't plan this.
We didn't know. But
let's pretend we did.
Yeah. I'll cut this bit out. Now, I want to talk about the next song, Stop Looking Back, because I think this was one of my favorites on the album.
Yeah.
It had, when I said to you about that generic classic rock sound, I was still really enjoying the album, but then Stop Looking Back started, and I was like, yeah, this is cool. Okay, this is a bit similar to the last song now. I'm seeing a pattern. Is this going to be another generic rock album? And then that chorus hit, man. And wow, it just had, I can't even describe it. It just had this aura about it. I always say it's not about the notes you play, it's about the space you leave.
Yeah.
And less is more. They're my favorite quotes in music. And there is just, you got the hecticness of the verses, and suddenly the chorus hits, and it's just like, breathe, like a breath of air. Take da 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 da.
And it's Don Brewer again singing, isn't it?
It is, yes.
Yeah. And it's interesting because the same singer, the first song you've got this like more aggressive kind of classic hard rock vibe.
Yeah.
And on the second song he goes more melodic, doesn't he?
Yeah. And I thought this song actually really reminded me of Never Before by Deep Purple.
Oh, right.
Because it just had that kind of funk to it. Just the hard rock funk, I like to call it, which is you're hearing hard rock instruments, but in a very funky manner. But yeah, well, any songs we mention, including the album, guys, will be on the playlist in the show notes below. So go and check that out if you want to listen along as we talk about it. But yeah, that chorus, it had almost like, I don't know, it just felt almost a bit progressive. Just the way the tone changed, the tempo changed. I don't think the tempo changed, maybe, or maybe it did. But it just kind of, like I said, I just really loved that. It just kind of gave you the moment to breathe, because the first song, although it's not a fast song, it's kind of energetic. It's kind of like, right,
in terms of tempo, this song is slightly slower, so it feels a little, even feels heavier to me. That's not like they don't necessarily sound like Black Sabbath, but Black Sabbath was really good at doing that like slow, heavy, dark kind of vibe. And they have a little bit of that, not much, but a little bit of that. And slightly slower. It's not too slow. And then can we move on to the next song?
Bro, you lead it, man. Yeah, you chose the album.
You know what? The song that really surprised me is the third one, Creeping. That's the first one with Mark Farner singing, and that's his song for real. He's doing.
Great song, isn't it?
He wrote the song and he sings the song. And I think it's like, okay, let's say they were intentionally record in that order. It's like, okay, that's the first song that I'm actually the lead singer. So, I'm gonna I'm going to make it remarkable. And I think it's a really, really good song. And it's the first time that the keyboards really make a huge difference in my opinion.
So I've got here focus and prominence on the keyboards. It's very, very keyboard heavy.
The bass riff is amazing. So, because we're talking about the drums and keyboards all the time, but the bass riff is really tasty, and I like the bass. I like the bass tone throughout the whole album.
Yeah,
I think the bass stands out without ever being too much.
Yeah. It is the perfect bass performance because it does enough to keep you interested. It does enough to give you a little taste of something like, oh, this is interesting, but it never overrides it. It never plays more than it needs to. With Creepin', track 3, I found that the use of the keyboards and organs gave it a very soulful feel. And it's very groovy as well, wasn't it? Really nice track.
It is. And I think in terms of lyrics, if you compare the songwriting, it sounds to me that like Mark Farner always wants to go slightly more political, and he's always like trying to raise awareness to something that's going on. So basically there's a line in the song, men getting rich off raping the land. I can't understand why we don't take them in hand. So he is more into like pointing out that something he doesn't think is right and asking people to take action. And there's an element to rock and roll, and I think that's the balance in the album. It doesn't get political, like, because you have songs that balance it out. There's songs about like, let's just have fun, get drunk. And there's songs about, look at what those guys are doing. This is not cool.
But it doesn't break the themes of the album up, does it? The album is still about life on the road in America. I think the band excuse me. I think the band, I think what I'm trying to say, what's that phrase? How's that just gone out of my head? What's the phrase? It's like you get what you see. What's on the can? Jesus, you've got it as well. It's like what you see is what you get, something like that.
What you see is what you get.
It's something about a can, isn't it? It's like the label on the can. Oh, Jesus, anyway. I think
you're the native speaker here, man. You need to know those quotes.
I think that what we've been told about this album is that this album is about a band who went on a tour across the United States and then wrote an album about it. And I think, although you're talking politics in the sense of maybe Don Brewer's looking at this slightly politically, I still have a feeling that the lyrics to this song were influenced because he saw something on the road. Do you know what I mean? Like he saw maybe culture, but you're right. It doesn't break up the themes of the album just because the first two songs, the first song's about the partying and the playing poker with Freddie King. The second one's a bit different. It is a bit more introspective. It's kind of like, right, stop looking back, look forward. Like it's a bit philosophical. Like, don't look to the past, look to the future. And then the third one gets a bit political. But
and that's the first one that there's actually written and sung by Mark Farner. So he tends to take songs more into that direction. But it's not like mentioning any specific names or any specific situation, or again, not getting too political or anything. And it sounds to me that if there's a formula with lyrics in this album, is like they are very simple, like straight to the point. Unlike we reviewed American Pie, there's so many interpretations that you can have for the same verse. This is like, this is what it is. Whatever the lyrics are telling you, there's no. It's not subtle. Let's
sorry. It does what it says on the tin. That's the quote.
Okay.
Sorry. It just popped in. Yeah, sorry, bro.
Right. Yeah, I'm glad you remembered because I wouldn't. So basically, So it sounds to me like the verses exist to lead you to the chorus in terms of lyrics. I'm not saying the lyrics are not great because they're really, really good, but it's like, okay, here's a verse. We're going to lead you to a magnificent chorus every single time. And I want to make this point. Every single chorus in this album is just perfect. They nailed it every time.
Yeah,
you might think the song is not as good as the previous song, but every chorus is well sung, well written. The melodies are spot on.
That's a great point. Yeah. Yeah, they really deliver every time. And even like you said, even if a verse is just like, okay, it's all right. Yeah, it's okay if a verse. When you get to the chorus, you're like, okay, yeah. Do you know what? Give me another one of those verses, as long as I get the same chorus afterwards, isn't it?
Exactly.
Excellent.
So
Where do you want to take us next?
yeah, let's move on. We probably have time to talk about every song
Do you want to?
because
Yeah,
there's
should,
only
should we
eight
do it?
tracks.
We'll just do
Yeah,
each
yeah.
one this time. This one, very, very deep purpley in more ways than one. I kind of heard space
True.
fucking vocals. I heard Ian Gillan, like in the Black Licorice.
Yeah.
Very much sort of Ian Gillan vocals, Space Trucking by Deep Purple. John Lord keyboard solos as well,
Yeah.
really playing it in here. Um, and this is the other part I said, metal rhythms and dissonance after the keyboard solo. So listen carefully. After the keyboard solo's done, you just get some very, very understated heavy metal rhythms. I don't remember the rhythm exactly, but I'm thinking something along the lines of, chugging, and dissonance. Again, listen out for it. That I should have written it down, whichever instrument it was. Maybe it's the guitar. I think it was the guitar. Listen to it because there's just going to be and it doesn't last long either, just like 10 or 15 seconds where the guitar is playing something a little dissonant and you just go, ooh. And it's just a tiny bit, like I said, with heavy metal, sometimes you get whole songs that are dissonant. Black Sabbath's first song, Black Sabbath,
Yeah.
the whole thing's dissonant. With this one, it's just 10 seconds of you just going, oh, hold on. What's that? And then they
make you feel slightly uncomfortable for a few seconds, and
only
they
to
move
bring
on.
you back.
I think they never stay on the same sort of riff for too long.
Well,
they seem to. There's quite a lot of changes throughout the album, and there's always some new element going on, either a unexpected drum fill or a tempo change, and they do quite a lot of that. I think the amount of complexity in this album is such a great contrast to how catchy the choruses are, because you could just go full on pop rock if you wanted to with those kind of I think for the vocals are heavily influenced by soul music, I would say, because you can hear that.
Yeah, definitely. Brewer's vocals, I think.
Yeah,
very much
for
so.
sure. And then having that sort of voice, singing, repetitive in a good way, and catchy choruses. And if you just write straightforward rock songs, that could be a really, really easy way to write a best-selling album. But I don't think they wanted to go down the easiest way. They were creative in every single song. There's always one section like in every song. They think, oh, wait a minute, I didn't see that come.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
As you're talking about the dissonances in this song. Again, you mentioned Deep Purple. The lyrics is, for this song is the kind of stuff that Ian Gillan would write. So, and it's, again, nothing to make you think and reflect about life and change the way you see the world. It's just like having fun. Same thing. And it's a partnership, songwriting. There's a partnership between Brewer and Farner. So they wrote the song together, and Don Brewer is the singer. On my notes here, I got the perfect bass intro, fast and groovy, isn't it?
Yes, yeah. Really,
that's
good
one thing.
And quite a few bass intros on this one that were really good.
Yeah.
But yeah, do you want to move on to the Railroad?
Yes.
Yeah, that was I really enjoyed this one. And something I had to say about the whole album was that I felt that it's a hard rock album, obviously, and it has been packaged, performed, and executed as such. But I loved that you could hear little influences of everything that had come from American popular music in the years before.
Yeah.
Little bits of funk, little bits of blues, little bits of country, little bits, I think the song, is it Loneliest Rider, the last one? Gospel backing vocals, the female gospel choir singing behind. What did I say? Blues, funk, country, gospel, rock and roll. It's just tiny little hints of each one sprinkled over the rock music and meshed and amalgamated into one hard rock package that celebrates the history and culture of American popular music in the days gone by.
Man, you can put that phrase on a book. That was
Thanks.
That was a great statement. Yeah. And just about the song, The Railroad, since the band decided to drop railroad from the name, that is the only time the word railroad appears on the album sleeve or album cover or anything else. So that word has been, taken off the name. So it's not there. But it's on the song. So the song, The Railroad. Right. And again, it does make you think about a band on the road, isn't it? So they're traveling, they can see the tracks. And
I just wanted to add that I made my point and then I forgot to actually expand on my point, which was I hear quite Americana vibes in The Railroad. It makes me think of the band.
Oh, wow.
I know we make this joke every time, but the band called the band. For those who don't know. Just had that, the hold on, the railroad is a mighty good line. Just imagine all of them singing it together. Just the harmonies with each other, singing about an American railroad, just like, I really got that vibe. I thought it was a really lovely song. And even things like this, in the second verse, you've got the percussive sound of the hammer hitting the rail track.
Yeah.
I thought that was really interesting because that's a sound effect. It's not a percussive element. They haven't chosen an instrument and said, okay, put some cowbell on or put some, I don't know, another percussion instrument, put some glockenspiel on or whatever.
Yeah.
They've just said, we want to sound like a hammer hitting a railroad track. It's like when you're in a movie.
And they make that, and they make all of that sound dramatic, in a certain way. So I think the intro is quite dramatic because you have some heavy stabs, is when everyone hits at the same time, like cymbals and distorted guitar and the bass. Everyone's doing the same hits at the same time. But that after that, immediately you have a slow, melancholic guitar riff, and the vocals start. When the vocals come in for the first verse, there's no bass, no drums, there's no groove. It's just the guitar and the vocals. And then when the chorus comes up, it gets so much more powerful because you have all the other instruments backing it up. So it's super cool the way they arranged the song. Is really well thought, and it's not random. It builds up the expectation for the chorus. Everything's just perfect. The BVs, the amount of layers of BVs they add, it's like a choir singing the BVs on the chorus. Super cool. One thing I have here on my notes that I found really interesting, like the groove changes completely halfway through the song, and it kicks off a long instrumental section that lasts almost until the end with keyboard and guitar solos, prepared for one last round of chorus, which is super cool.
I loved that part. I thought the tempo change and the vibe change halfway through was brilliant. Just took you on such a journey. It felt like one of those songs, because the songs that had come before, even though they had different stylistic lineages, if you want, they were still kind of pop songs. Verse, chorus, bridge, solo, chorus, outro. Each one kind of followed that structure. And then with this, you just get taken on this journey where it's like, hold on, it just bang, pauses halfway through. And it's like, here, try some of this. So we just change it up completely. I thought that was really good.
It is really good.
Now, onto the two poppiest songs of the album. Would you agree?
Yes, Ain't Got Nobody and Walk Like a Man.
That's right. One Farner, one written by Farner and one bit written by Brewer. I still heard a little bit of country.
Actually, if I'm not wrong, they both written by both of them, but Farner sings Ain't Got Nobody.
My notes are who sang
Brewer
it,
sings
wrote
Walk
it.
Like a Man.
So Farner sings track 6, Brewer sings track 7. The thing I liked, we did say that they don't really hang on to a lot of riffs, but at the end of Ain't Got Nobody, there's that section where they just vamp on 2 chords for the last minute or so, isn't it? Last 2 minutes, I think, and they just go from one chord to another, and that's the side that I really enjoyed because, like you said, in the previous songs, you've got them going from riff to riff, section to section, changing things up, changing tempos, changing melodies. And then at the end of Ain't Got Nobody, they just sit on that and vamp it for like 2.5 minutes.
Yeah.
And I really enjoyed that because it's a pleasant change to what we were used to.
Yeah, exactly. And it's a slow, funky groove as well at the beginning with some double tempo sections in the song.
Yeah.
So that it feels like it gets faster, just like a double tempo vibe, and then it goes back to the slow funky groove. So that's the other thing that makes a song interesting. Again,
And
once you get comfortable with the groove or the riff, they take you to a completely different section, and they bring you back to the chorus. They do that all the time. It's super cool.
something interesting is the lyrics of this song, because these, like I said to you at the start, we go through the highs and the lows of touring. This one, Ain't Got Nobody, I really felt, that it's very much about loneliness and longing for a personal connection, whether that's romantic or friendly, I'm not entirely sure. But we know from having been on tour, it's a tough life, man. Your loved ones aren't with you. You can be on the road for 2 or 3 weeks, sometimes longer, a month or so.
It's because if
you're only with your bandmates, you're not with your loved ones, the people who you see every day, the people you might go and see your dad once a week. It doesn't happen.
And for a musician on the road, although people think it's just about having fun every night, there's so much work to do, and so much traveling, and so much sitting around with nothing to do. Really can get boring from time to time. And you might be on the road thinking about, oh, you know what, my wife is somewhere with her friends having fun, or my friends are having a pint in my favorite pub now, and I'm not with them. Or I want to see my family. You're just not on this. Like, we're talking under the point of view of people who toured like for a couple of weeks from time to time, and always going back home and staying home for a few weeks as well, going back. If you're on the road for 10 days, feels like a month, because things get too repetitive too quickly. And when you're mentioning bands that were as famous as Grand Funk was at the time, it means they're going to be on the road for months. And
imagine how long that feels.
It's nothing close to a normal life, and it's definitely a great topic for an album, and it's amazing they've managed to capture without sounding self-indulgent or arrogant, or it's not, they're not saying this, it's all fun, and they're not all pretending to be it's too difficult as well. It's just like they're going to talk about both sides of being on the road, the loneliness and the fun. I love
that's a great point, man. This album perfectly captures and sums up the life, emotions, feelings, highs and lows of a touring band, isn't it? Amazing stuff, man. Amazing stuff. Walk Like a Man.
That's the second single, right? Obviously the first one is We're an American Band. The second single, and I think they really got it right when they chose the singles for the album. Might not be my favorite song. I love Creeping. That would, but that's not a single. That's not single material, isn't it? So I would choose Creeping as my favorite after We're an American Band. But Walk Like a Man, again, a partnership so. It was written by Farner and Brewer. Brewer does the lead vocals, and I love the intro riff because there's lots of space. Mm-hmm. So they do those stabs, and then there's gaps in the riff. It's not like it's not a full long rock riff. It's heavy, but there's loads of space, and I like that. And throughout the song, there's some insane drum fills, and I love that. I love the way the drums are literally filling the gaps and giving the song that boost that you need from time to time. I love it. And the guitar solo is quite bluesy, in my opinion.
Well, yeah, no, I agree. One point I was going to make is that it's a very poppy song in terms of melodies and choruses, but the instrumentation and the performance takes it from being a pop song to a hard rock song, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And I think that's where this album properly succeeds, because you've got pop stuff littered throughout, but yet the way they play it and the tone of their guitars and the production makes it sound like a hard rock album, which is, isn't it?
Yeah, totally. And I think maybe, in the 70s, bands would dare to do that more often. Obviously no one would mind a long instrumental section. It's not like nowadays you need to have a 2.5-minute song if you want to put on the radio. And you can't have guitar solos, you can't have distortion and all the stuff. I think hard rock was, really, really the soundtrack of the 70s. And I think Grand Funk was riding that wave in the best possible way.
Another great point. The final song of the album, Loneliest Rider. I'd say this is probably one of my favorites. I really enjoyed this one. I loved the different stuff you hear in it. It's got that southern dirty rock vibe in the guitar and the key tones, the keyboard tones. Really enjoyed that. But then again, you've got those gospel backing vocals coming in that I thought was just really, really cool. You get to the end of the album and you think you've heard it all, and then suddenly out of nowhere they throw in some female gospel vocals. Amazing.
That song is not filler. Is there because
No.
it owns his space in the album, doesn't it?
Yeah.
I love at the beginning. There's and it happens again. I think at the end of the song, the drums, they go into a tribal groove, which basically when you use the tones more than snare and kick to actually build the groove. You use kick and snare drum, but instead of cymbals, you use more drums, more tones, as the low tones of the drum kit. And that has everything to do with the lyrics. So
I just wanted. Sorry, no, that's a great point. And it's got that percussive ending as well, isn't it?
Yeah, another one with the percussive. And so yes, it's quite trap. That percussive ending, it does remind me more of like Native American percussion stuff. It? So that it really suits the song. There's a really great line in the lyrics: "Is none of the stories in the school books said it. The truth is gone, and they're trying to forget it." So super cool. Nice. About the fact that we haven't been told everything about history as we might think we have. So
really does evoke that American cowboys meets Indian thing, doesn't it? I really kind of got that. Loneliest Rider, just I want to point out again that dissonance post keys solo. So after the keys solo, you get this very heavy and dissonant riff. And then as it moves on from that, just go back and listen to the song and listen to the descending, dark, heavy guitar riff that's going on in one ear. And then in the other ear, you've got the keyboards playing a little motif that's consonant. It's like, stop, don't think about the song for 5 seconds and you've missed it. If you're listening to the song and something comes on the TV and your attention's there, you're going to miss it. But just pay attention, because a lovely little contrast. Again, you don't expect these kind of contrasts in this kind of accessible hard rock music. And just another example of some fantastic songwriting and production, I suppose, as well, because I think the did you check out the last two songs, the bonus ones?
Yeah, I did. Yeah, the end.
Oh, they were great.
Yeah, Hooray! Hooray is a great song.
It's nice and fun, isn't it?
If someone listens to the remastered version of the album with the extra tracks, I haven't got my notes for the last song, The End, which is a great song as well. But Hooray is a relentless guitar riff, and there's pretty much no lyrics, just like one verse. It's basically like the band is simply jamming to the main riff and having a good time. It feels to me they're just like, let's just jam to this, and it might become a song or not, but it's on the extended version of the album. It sounds like a soundtrack for an action movie to me.
Good point, cool. Yeah. And for me, the song The End, which would be track 10 on the bonus album, literally could be a Black Sabbath intro. It's just that dark, doomy, heavy, distorted bass. Another heavy funk song. You got the heavy, dirty, funky, groovy. The solos are brilliant. Another guitar riff with very dissonant and unusual towards the end, followed by the keys playing in verse 2. Just really unusual stuff. I often think when I hear an album and they put on those when any band puts on 4 tracks that didn't make it to the album, you kind of hear them and you go, okay, they're cool, but I see why they didn't make it to the album. These two I really thought could have made it.
Yeah, well, it's just like in the 70s, maybe 8 tracks is enough for an album. It's one of those things. I think. Cool. I mean, I'm going to before you do your amazing monologue, because I know it's going to be amazing. I just want to say a couple of things about the album. I think, in general, I believe there's a really, really good balance between the heaviness of rock riffs and the funky vibes of the drum grooves. And I think this is just really, really well mixed in the album.
And can I just add to that? Pop vocal melodies.
Yes. pop
And you've
vocal
got that
melodies
fantastic
with
trio, isn't
yeah,
it?
exactly. So they can go quite pop, almost like before they get too cheesy, they would come up with a double tempo section or something that you're not predicting, and I love that.
Right.
And yeah, so I think it's well balanced in that way. Also, there's the right amount of room for each instrument to shine, without becoming bigger than the song itself. No musician is more important than the song in this album, and this is just brilliant.
Great point.
Yeah.
Cool. Are we happy to finish up there?
Yes.
Yeah, excellent. I just want to, some accolades for the album. So, unsurprisingly, it did really well in the US and Canada, on number 1 in US Record World, number 1 US Cashbox, number 2 in the Billboard 200, number 4 in Canadian Top Albums. Around the world, not so much. Sort of in Norway, it hit number 12. In Germany, it was 46. In Australia, it was number 27. But in the National Association of Recording Merchandisers, their definitive 200 albums of all time, this fits in at number 200. Interestingly,
really good.
They've got the final spot. But yeah, a classy album. And I think that's time for my monologue, right?
Classy album.
Classy album. Here we go. So my monologue. The album feels like an amalgamation of all American music to have come before it, conglomerated into one hard rock album. We have said this before with other bands and albums, but the difference with this is that it sounds like the next progression in the musical evolution. It doesn't feel like an R&B influenced album or an album with a blues background. It feels like a hard rock album, but drawing on inspirations from funk, blues, gospel, rock and roll, R&B, and country. They've taken the best parts of each of these genres and created a hybrid that undoubtedly rocks hard, but still gives you glimpses and glimmers into America's musical past. Now, not knowing the band, I'm going to have to compare them to Deep Purple, as this is the sound and overall vibe that I really got from them. In comparison to Deep Purple, it feels like the band aren't as virtuotistic as Deep Purple. There is a lack of stunning solos the way that Ritchie Blackmore and John Lord would have done. There aren't as many flashes of brilliance in a guitar riff, for example. But what you do have is an absolute cohesion between the band that is unlike anything I've heard from a hard rock band. It sounded phenomenal. Rock is about freedom and looseness, and the amount of freedom I hear within this music whilst sounding tight was unbelievable. I think there is music on this album for everyone, and I think the best way I can describe it is this. It is the heaviest, easy listening album I've ever heard. An album you'd put on in the car to show off your music taste for everyone to hear, and more importantly, for everyone to enjoy.
Brilliant.
It is just a feel-good album. Every time I finished, even though you've got dark songs like Loneliest Rider and The End, you still come away thinking, I want to go on tour with these guys.
Yeah. Or if they're coming to my town, I'll be there.
That's it. Yes, exactly. Yeah. Perfect. Well, guys, we'll leave it there. Thank you again for joining us on another episode of the Long Live Rock and Roll podcast. He's been Felipe. I've been Laz. As we said at the start of the show, please find us on all the social media platforms. Hit all the buttons to stay up to date with our content, and we'll see you next time.
Yeah, interact with us. Download episodes to listen to. Download episodes should not listen to, so just to give us a boost on the download numbers. And, leave your comments. Suggest albums for us to talk about. And thanks for being with us once again. Keep on rocking, everyone.
As usual, guys, take care and long live rock and roll.